Good evening, dear listener. I'm glad you are here. Settle in however you like. Let your shoulders soften and let the day drift a little farther away. There is nowhere you need to go now, nothing you need to solve, nothing you need to carry for the next little while. Let the rain be outside, let the light grow gentle, and let this story keep you company. May your breath grow slower, your thoughts quieter, and your heart a little lighter as you listen. Tonight, you are safe, and time is allowed to loosen its grip. You stand at the narrow front window of your old workshop and watch the rain write its silver lines down the glass. Evening has folded itself over the street outside, soft as dark velvet, and every lamp in the lane wears a faint golden halo in the wet air. The autumn rain has been steady since late afternoon, not stormy, not loud, only patient, as though it is all night and all the world in which to fall. It taps the window, slides along the sill, and gathers in the shallow grooves between the cobbles. Somewhere farther down the lane, a cart passes slowly, wheels whispering over stone. Then even that small sound fades, and there is only the rain, the ticking wall clock, and the quiet breathing of the room around you. Your workshop is old enough to have its own moods. The floorboards are dark and smooth from many years of footsteps. Shelves line the walls from waist height nearly to the ceiling, holding music boxes of every kind, polished walnut caskets with tiny brass keys, lacquered boxes painted with faded flowers, square oak boxes with velvet interiors, little traveling boxes with worn leather corners, and miniature mechanical birds asleep in carved cases. Some are wrapped in linen. Some sit open, displaying small arrangements of gears and pins like delicate constellations made of brass. Some wait in silence, patient as closed books. The air smells of beeswax, cedar shavings, old paper metal filings, and the faint sweetness of oil used sparingly and carefully. On your workbench, beneath the cone of a green-shaded lamp, everything is arranged exactly as your hands like it to be. A roll of soft cloth, a tray lined with dark felt, fine screwdrivers with smooth pearwood handles, small brushes, bristles clean and pale, tweezers like silver birds' bones, a glass vial of oil that catches the lamplight, a tin of polishing compound, a magnifying lens, a little ceramic dish to hold tiny screws. Beside all this lies the evening's patient companion, a music box made of rosewood hidden in the grain, its lid inlaid with a ring of pale maple leaves, so finely cut they seem almost painted. You draw your chair closer and sit. The seat gives its familiar, soft creak beneath you. At once the room seems to settle around that sound, as if it has been waiting for you to do exactly this. You place your fingertips on the lid of the box for a moment before opening it, not from superstition exactly, but from habit and from kindness. Objects that carry music, you have always felt, deserve a small pause before they are asked to speak. When you lift the lid, the hinges answer with a whisper of metal. Inside, the lining is old blue velvet, now softened toward gray where time and fingertips have passed over it. The brass mechanism is exposed under a protective plate, and the cylinder, pinned with tiny bright teeth of melody, rests beside the comb whose narrow tines wait to sing. Even before you touch anything, you can see where age has left its signatures. A dimming of the metal, a thread of dust in the corner near the governor, a slight stiffness in the spring barrel. Nothing tragic, nothing broken beyond repair. Only the ordinary fatigue of a small, faithful machine that has kept its music a long time. You smile without meaning to. These are the repairs you like best. Not the dramatic ones, not the shattered cases and stripped gears and missing parts, but these quiet restorations, where all that is needed is attention, patience, and a hand gentle enough to remind a mechanism what it was made to do. The rain deepens for a minute, drumming more fully on the window and roof. The lamp glows warm on your hands. The metal tools shine softly, and the wood of the bench reflects amber light from years of polishing with sleeves, palms, and cloth. You inhale. The evening seems to slow in that breath. Not stop, not freeze, but slow the way a river slows when it widens, becoming calmer, broader, and easier to follow. You begin by removing the small screws that hold the plate in place. One by one, you turn them with the fine screwdriver, feeling the faint resistance, then the release. Each screw goes into the ceramic dish with a tiny click, a sound so small and clear that it seems to make more room for silence rather than disturb it. Then you lift the plate and set it on the felt tray. Underneath, the movement reveals itself more fully. The curled strength of the spring inside its barrel, the train of gears with their clean, deliberate teeth, the governor with its modest spinning wings, the cylinder waiting close to the comb. It is a private landscape, intricate and exact, where every small thing depends on the courtesy of every other small thing. You lean nearer. In the lamp's light, the brass looks less like metal and more like old honey deepened with age. Here and there are specks of tarnish, like shadows on a field. You take up a soft brush and begin to sweep away the dust. Dust yields instantly, drifting aside as if relieved to be noticed at last. Your hand moves in slow arcs. Brush, pause, turn the box a little. Brush again. Each motion has its own quiet authority. Outside, the rain keeps time with no urgency at all. There is a kind of listening you do with your fingers. You have known this for years. You do not only see the mechanism, you feel its mood through the minute tremors beneath your touch, through the ease or reluctance of a wheel, through the way a spring takes or resists the first suggestion of movement. When you touch the winding arbor and test it gently, you can feel the tightness where old oil has thickened. The spring is not tired. It is merely asking not to be hurried. You moisten the tip of a cloth with a trace of cleaner and polish the visible edges of the brass, not until they gleam brightly, because that would be wrong for a box like this, but until the dullness softens and the metal remembers its warmth. The cloth darkens. The brass brightens modestly. A good repair, you often think, should look less like correction than relief. On the shelf above the bench sits a row of finished boxes waiting to be collected. Some belong to strangers who came in from the rain weeks ago, carrying family heirlooms wrapped in scarves. Some belong to people you have known half your life. A baker who once found a Swiss movement at a market and brought it to you in a bread tin. A widowed schoolteacher who winds the same tune every Sunday evening. A young violinist who cannot pass your window without stopping to ask what you are working on now. Their music boxes rest above you like quiet stories. In this room, you are never entirely alone, though the solitude is gentle. The workshop is full of kept promises. You take up a brush with even finer bristles and clean between the teeth of the gears. Brass, steel, shadow, light. Each tooth catches the lamp and lets it go. You turn the cylinder carefully and inspect the pins. A few are slightly dulled with residue, one or two carrying a thread of lint, so fine it would be invisible in any harsher light. With tweezers, you lift it away. With a soft cloth, you wipe the cylinder. Slowly, always slowly. You know too well how a rushed hand can turn a mild repair into a sorrowful one. As you work, The room becomes deeper. The corners grow dimmer, the lamp more golden. Rainwater shines on the window in wavering reflections. Every now and then, a passing headlight moves across the ceiling and disappears, leaving the shadows to gather themselves again. The wall clock ticks with a dignity so old it no longer sounds like counting. It sounds like breathing. It sounds like a friendly reminder that the evening is not a thing to chase. There are nights, especially in autumn, when you suspect the workshop keeps a second time beneath the ordinary one. Not another hour or date, nothing that could be written neatly on paper, but a slower current that reveals itself only when the rain is steady and the light is low and your hands are occupied with something small and precise. That other time, wood grain becomes more visible, as if the years in the tree rise quietly to the surface. Brass seems to hold a memory of every hand that ever wound it. Silence grows textured. Even your own thoughts soften at the edges and drift farther apart, so they no longer crowd one another. Tonight is one of those nights. You lift the mechanism slightly to inspect the spring barrel from below. The rosewood case is cool and smooth against your palm, but warm where it has rested under the lamp. The grain is beautiful, long, dark rivers passing through reddish earth. At one corner, there is a worn place where somebody long ago must have opened and closed the lid many times with a particular thumb. You imagine that thumb without trying too hard to place it. An aunt, perhaps. A father. A child who was once told to be gentle and remembered the instruction all their life. Music boxes gather people into themselves in this way. They keep fingerprints long after the oil has faded. With a slender tool, you release a little tension from the spring, only what is necessary. The movement gives a faint click, then rests. You disassemble the accessible parts with practiced tenderness, arranging each piece on the felt in the order it came away. A wheel no bigger than a coin, a tiny screw, a bridge plate, the governor, light enough to seem made of folded breath. You clean old grease from a pivot point, then from another, rolling the cloth into a fine point to reach where fingers cannot. A smell of old machine oil rises briefly, metallic and almost sweet, then is replaced by cedar from the drawer you open to choose a fresh pegwood stick. The drawer itself is one of your favorite things in the room. Its handle is worn smooth as river stone. Inside lie supplies that seem humble until needed. Lengths bits of ribbon, spare keys, slivers of cork, envelopes of replacement screws, labels written in your own hand, and sticks of polished pegwood used to clean the smallest bearings without scratching them. When you slide the drawer closed, it makes a wooden hush, a sound so well known to you that it eases something in your chest. You sit back for a moment and flex your fingers. Beyond the workshop, the street has grown quieter still. Most windows across the lane are lit now, their curtains drawn. Behind one curtain, a shadow passes carrying a kettle. Behind another, a lamp is lowered. The world beyond your glass seems far away, and yet kindly near, as if the whole street has agreed to move more softly because of the rain. Then, while your hand is suspended over the open movement, you hear it. It is only a few notes, so faint that for an instant you are not sure whether they came from the box before you or from one of the shelves behind you, or from some seam in the room where old sounds have learned to linger. Not a full tune, not even enough to name, just a silvery rise of melody, thin as breath on a mirror, followed by a pause, and one last note descending into the rain. You do not startle. You never do. This has happened before, on evenings much like this one. You remain still, letting the note fade all the way. The workshop answers with its ordinary sounds. The clock, the rain, the faint settling of wood as the night air cools. But the tiny melody has changed the texture of the room, as a single candle changes a darkened church. Nothing alarming enters with it, nothing cold or unwelcome, only a tenderness difficult to explain, as though some long ago listener has passed through the doorway of memory, paused to hear whether their music still lives, and then moved on content. You glance at the shelves. The boxes sit quietly. One lacquered lid reflects the lamp. Another shows a painted swallow with one wing chipped at the tip. They are all silent now, and yet the silence feels inhabited, not empty. Safe, you think. That is the word for it. Whatever mystery belongs to this workshop has never wished you harm. It is the gentlest mystery, you know. The possibility that music, once loved, does not entirely leave the place where it was often heard. You return to your work, and because of those few notes, your hands grow even softer. You clean the comb carefully, running the fine brush along the tines, removing the faint dust that blunts their brilliance. Each tine is a possibility of sound. Each one waits for the exact touch of the pinned cylinder to wake it. You examine them under the lens. None are bent. None are broken. Good. Very good. The box is old, but the melody is intact. A drop of oil is far too much for work like this, so you use less than a drop. Only a suggestion of lubrication placed precisely where metal meets metal and asks for kindness. The pivots take it gladly. The gears seem to settle into easier alignment. When you reassemble the train, there is a visible difference, not dramatic, but true. The parts sit with less effort, as if they have remembered one another's names. The lamp hums faintly. Rain beads on the window and releases itself in slow trails. The room's shadows gather close, but never become oppressive. They are companionable shadows, full of old shapes you know. The curve of a violin case left for repair. The square profile of a cabinet of tools. The rounded shoulder of your coat hanging by the door. The workshop at night has always felt less like a place of business than a harbor for delicate things. You fit the governor back into place and test its movement with a cautious touch. It spins with a soft, dry whisper, then slows. Better. You install the bridge, replace the screws, and seat them without over-tightening. The mechanism now looks composed, ready, almost content. In the warm light, the brass and steel resemble a little city after rain. Every surface washed and restored to clarity. Before winding the spring, you close your hand lightly around the key for a moment. It is made of brass, cool at first, then warming quickly to your skin. The bow of the key is worn smooth by years of turning. Many hands have held it. Now yours does. You insert it into the arbor and begin to wind gently, listening to the spring gather strength within the barrel. Click, turn, click, turn. Not too much. Enough to invite the melody. Enough to prove the repair. The resistance is steady and pleasant now. No longer gummy, no longer reluctant. It feels like drawing a curtain back from a window that has wanted opening all day. When you release the stop, you lower your head to listen. At first, there is only the smallest mechanical stirring. The governor beginning its patient spin, the cylinder moving into relation with the comb, the intimate hush of parts doing what they were made for. Then the first note arrives. It is tiny, clear, and so pure in the close room that it seems less struck than breathed into existence. Another follows, and another, assembling themselves into a tune you do not know by name, but have heard in fragments more than once. It is simple, old-fashioned, between the notes matter as much as the notes themselves. You listen with your whole still body. The music box plays more softly than you expected, but with greater depth. Cleaned of dust and stiffness, the comb shivers with fine silver sound. The cylinder turns like a narrow planet of brass stars. Notes rise, hover, and fade into the room where the rain receives them without swallowing them entirely. The tune seems to make the lamplight gentler. It seems to polish the wood grain of the bench from within. Even the clock, for these few moments, sounds as though it has stepped back respectfully to allow a smaller voice to be heard. You have often thought that large music belongs to public life, to halls, to churches, to wide windows thrown open in summer. But the music of a box belongs to nearness. It belongs to bent heads, clasped hands, dusk, memory, and rooms where one lamp is enough. It belongs to the scale of a heartbeat. Tonight, in the warm circle of your workshop, it feels as if the entire evening has folded itself to fit inside this rosewood case. When the tune ends, the final note trembles in the comb for a breath longer than seems possible. Then it is gone, yet not entirely gone. Something of it remains in the boards, the lamp, the rain-dark glass, and most of all in you. You keep your hand resting on the edge of the bench and let the silence return naturally. You never rush to wind a box again immediately after hearing it. Music needs room to settle, as dusk does, as evening does. Perhaps that is why those strange, nearly invisible notes visit the workshop now and then. Not because anything supernatural is trying to announce itself, but because some places become so practiced in listening that they begin to remember sound on their own. Here, where melodies have been repaired, resumed, and cherished for decades, perhaps a note can sometimes stay behind a little longer than expected. Perhaps wood keeps it. Perhaps brass does. Perhaps time, when it slows enough, lets old songs look around before moving on. You close the lid halfway and open it again, testing the hinge. Smooth. You inspect the inlay. One leaf at the edge has lifted by a hair's breadth, and you make a note to secure it before the box leaves your care. Then you turn the case in the light and polish the rosewood with a clean cloth. As the wax warms under your hand, the grain deepens and the reddish undertones bloom like embers under ash. The box begins to look less like something brought to you from the rain and more like something that belongs among the other restored pieces, waiting in dignity. You think of the person who left it, an elderly woman in a brown coat, perhaps, though you cannot be sure now. Evenings blur faces into feelings. She had held the box with both hands when she set it down and said, in a voice almost apologetic, that it had not played properly in years. There was a photograph tucked inside, she said, though she had taken it out before bringing the box, because she feared the image might be damaged. Her mother's box, then her own. It always sounded better in the evening, she had added, and smiled in a way that suggested she did not expect you to understand, though of course you did. Many things sound better in the evening. Rain kettles, footsteps returning home, pages turned in lamplight, and music boxes most of all. The second time you wind it, the melody comes easier. The notes are clearer now, their path through the mechanism unobstructed. You hear how the tune arcs gently upward before settling again, like a bird choosing not the highest branch, but the safest one. You hear the soft emphasis on one lower note, the little hesitation before the phrase returns. It is not a grand composition, but it does not need to be. There is comfort in modest music, in melodies that know the worth of restraint. You imagine how it will sound in another room, perhaps on a bedside table, or on a mantel near a lamp and framed photographs, with rain at the window and a listener grown older than they expected to be, winding the key with careful fingers, and hearing not only the tune, but the chain of evenings attached to it. One room leading to another, one autumn to another, one hand to another. Music boxes are small bridges made of metal and patience. A floorboard pops gently somewhere behind you as the wood adjusts to the damp, cold outside. You smile again. Even the workshop seems to approve. You secure the loose inlay, pressing it down with the tiniest amount of adhesive, then wiping away what excess there is before it can mark the surface. You line the screw heads neatly. You buff the lid once more. At last you place the box on a square of folded cloth and write a tag in your careful hand. Cleaned, lubricated, spring-tested, tune restored. You pause after the final word, restored. It is accurate, though not complete. Something else has happened here tonight, as it sometimes does, but there is no place for that on a tag. Outside, the rain begins to soften, not ending yet, but easing, becoming finer, more like a veil than a curtain. In the quieter fall of it, the street takes on a new hush. You can hear water moving along the gutter. A single pair of footsteps passes the window, then fades. From a distant chimney, there comes the faint smell of smoke, woodsy and familiar, slipping in where the casement does not quite meet the frame. You rise from your chair and carry the restored box to the shelf reserved for finished work. The shelf is oak, old and faintly bowed in the middle. When you set the rosewood box among the others, it seems immediately to take its place, as though it has always known where it belonged. The lacquered swallow beside it reflects in the polished lid. The painted flowers of another box lean near like neighbors in conversation. You step back and look at them all together. Quiet company in soft light. Small keepers of old songs. Then, almost as if to mark the moment, the workshop offers that mystery once more. From somewhere not quite locatable, not loud enough to disturb the air, there comes a single line of melody, no more than 4 or 5 notes. Clear, distant, affectionate. It might be the tune you have just repaired, or another one buried deeper in the room's memory. It hovers at the edge of hearing. You do not turn quickly. You simply stand with your hands resting at your sides and let the notes be what they are. Thank you, you think, though you do not know to whom. The notes fade. The room returns to rain and wood and lamplight. You lower the lamp wick slightly so the glow becomes softer still. The brass on the bench dims to amber. The tools lose their sharp reflections and become gentle shapes again. Your chair waits where you left it. The clock goes on with its patient breathing. Somewhere in the shelves, perhaps only in your imagination now, an old melody curls up and goes back to sleep. You wash your hands in the basin at the back of the room. The water is cool, then warmer as the kettle you set earlier yields enough heat to tame it. Soap lifts away the faint traces of metal and oil. When you dry your hands on the linen towel, your skin smells lightly of lavender kept in the drawer to scent the cloths. It is a domestic smell, a peaceful one, and it mingles with wax and cedar until the whole workshop feels less like a workplace than a room preserved inside a memory. You put away the tools one by one, never all at once. Screwdrivers to their tray, brushes in their cup, tweezers laid parallel, lens folded, oil corked. Each little act of order closes the evening's labor with kindness. The workbench clears gradually, revealing the dark sheen of the wood beneath. The lamp reflects in that polished surface like a moon in a still pond. When at last there is nothing left to do, you sit once more for a final minute and listen to the rain finishing its long conversation with the town. Your body is pleasantly tired. Your mind is clear in the way only careful work can make it clear. You think of the box on the shelf, repaired and waiting. You think of all the boxes that came before it, and all the evenings like this one, and all the people who entrusted their small, stored melodies to your hands. There is tenderness in such trust. There is also a kind of grace. Time has not disappeared. The clock proves that. The night will continue. The rain will pass. The lamp will be turned down and the door locked. Tomorrow there will be more work, more parcels, more keys, more tiny screws. But for now, in this autumn evening, inside this old workshop of wood and metal and soft light, time has become broad and slow enough to rest in. It moves around you like deep water around a stone, touching you without trying to carry you away. You rise, take one last look at the shelves, and feel the familiar calm of leaving things in good order. At the door, your hand pauses on the key. Behind you, the workshop waits in amber half-light, quiet and full of patient sleep. Ahead, the rain-silvered street and the cool evening. You turn the key gently, as though not to wake anyone. And as you step out into the soft autumn night, you have the distinct, comforting sense that inside the darkening room, among the old rosewood and brass, the tiniest melody is still there, not performing, not pleading, only resting, like a memory that knows it is safe, and so has no need to speak above a whisper.